Well, thank you for joining us and good afternoon. My name is Angie Wallace and I am the Director of Interior Training for the PYA, as well as an IARMI guest accredited training provider for the PYRSA programme. Most importantly, today I'm here as part of the Welfare Group. So this webinar today is to finally introduce you to us, the PYA Welfare Group, and today's topic of conversation will be bullying and harassment. Firstly, though, just as an introduction, the PYA, if you don't already know, is an international non-profit organisation representing professional yacht crew around the world. With over 90 members with over 90 countries, membership represents professional yacht crew and promoting high standards of qualifications, skills and knowledge amongst the yacht crew personnel, training providers and the industry in general. The PYA promotes the interests of yacht crew with authorities at a national and international level and delivers professional advice and one-to-one support to seafarers within the yachting industry. The Welfare Group has been set up to support and guide yacht crew, ensuring their well-being is safeguarded. We have been active behind the scenes and we have had already meetings with ISWAN, DPAs and the Shipowners P&I Club. We are forming relationships with flag states and aim to address recurring topics such as mental well-being, safety issues, bullying and harassment, complaints procedures and so forth. If you'd like to contact us, please do at our email address of welfare@pya.org. So, without further ado, I welcome you to the rest of my amazing Welfare Group, and each of them will now introduce themselves. So, first off, Kareen, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hello, everyone. So I am the crew coach and also have a guest IARMI accredited program, the Advanced Leadership course, Unit 22. I was an ex-seafarer myself, and then I moved on land and worked in therapeutic prisons across Australia, running educational programs as well as counselling, and I have degrees in psychology, organisational psychology, counselling and business.
Thank you. Sandra.
Hi everyone, I'm Sandra. I'm also the yacht purser. I run an IARMI accredited purser program. And I also I was a seafarer, I was a purser and a chief stew for around 10 years. And this is a topic that's really, really close to my heart, bullying and harassment on board. And part of the reason why we formed this welfare council was so that we could try and address these issues for you guys still working on board.
Thank you. Dominique.
Hi, my name is Dominique and I was a seafarer for nearly a decade, working my way up. And since moving ashore, I have established virtual pursers with my co-founder, Beck McKeever. And we've also recently, with Sandra Don, started the Siren Club, also providing support specifically for senior yacht crew and interior crew. And yeah, I'm also very passionate about providing support to the industry because it's something that I would have liked to have had when I was on board. So I'm very happy to be part of the group.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Samantha.
I am Samantha. I've been 12 years, going on 13 years at sea. I've been in the yachting industry for 6 years and I'm currently a purser on board. And I've just recently launched my business as life coach, which is to help crew change and implement healthier habits into their lives, and with the mental health being the main priority.
Fantastic, thank you. And Chandra.
Hi, my name is Chandra. I'm also known as Dre Robinson. I'm an ex-yacht chief stewardess. I'm the co-founder of yachtyflix.com and the founder of the Start Yachting Facebook group, which was actually started because I noticed a lot of online bullying happening in all the other groups. So we created a group where it's a safe place for people to come and ask questions. So this topic is quite true to my heart, and I joined the welfare group to promote a safer place for crew in our industry.
Fantastic, thank you. And lastly, but not least, Helen.
Hello everyone, I'm Helen, purser with 23 years experience on various size super yachts. Currently purser on board a 90-meter. I'm also part of this welfare group because I'm passionate about seafarers' well-being generally on board and ashore. And that's a quick one from me. I'll let everyone get on with the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ladies. And now on to the topic of conversation today, bullying and harassment. We are going to look at what it looks like, how it feels, cyber and social media bullying, effects, your rights as seafarers, what to do and how to report it. Please note, though, we actually are just volunteers and we are not lawyers. So everything that we say here today is without prejudice. Okay, please do use the chat to ask the panel any questions and we will endeavour to answer them. So first off, without further ado, Corinne, can you tell us, what does bullying and harassment, what does it look like?
Okay, so they are massive topics, and we were just discussing as a welfare group before we started that we can be talking about this topic forever. I have a load of case studies to share with you, but I'm only going to start with two. In terms of the definition, bullying is ongoing and repeated misuse of power with the intention of causing social, physical, and psychological harm. On the other side, harassment is more about illegal behavior that creates emotional and mental suffering. So the two are very similar, and it's very easy to get them confused and mixed up. But what's so interesting is that in each country or state, there are different laws. And I did some research here in Australia. And in fact, in Victoria, so in Melbourne, there is a legislation that's been passed where if you bully someone, you can serve up to 10 years in prison. This was because a female was bullied repeatedly in the workplace, and they thought, well, we need to actually do something about this. So that's really, really interesting to note that in some countries, bullying is actually a criminal offense. What I'm going to share with you now are two case studies. I put out a survey, and I think it becomes more relevant rather than me listing out all the types of bullying and harassment behavior. I will give you a download after I've finished talking, and then you can access all that information. So the first case study, which I actually received 2 hours ago, I went through a pretty rough patch not too long ago when our fleet was extended by the boss adding an additional boat to the fleet. It was then made clear I was to remain alone on the old vessel as the rest of the crew got to grips with the new boat. This was during a yard period for the old 45-meter where I was left to remain on board. And if memory serves correctly, I was pretty much on watch for about 25 days straight. I wasn't able to leave the vessel, as we are all aware, whilst being on watch. And this affected me pretty hard as we had just finished up a very busy New England season, followed by a short Bahamas season. It was more of a mental attack, as most yachts also need to just like step off the boat for a weekend or even a night just to reset. However, I wasn't able to. So the next individual said that she was working on a 55-meter when the pandemic hit, and she resigned just before flights were impossible to take because she wanted to be closer to home in case anything happened. The captain didn't take her resignation well at all and ended up treating her badly, bullied by him, she said. He sent me inappropriate, aggressive text messages and then would ignore me at work and make me feel uncomfortable to be around him. And then I ended up having to stay longer because flights stopped and my mental health took a massive load because of the way I was being treated. I ended up being on very high doses of medication to get me through the workday and to help me sleep at night so I could work the next day. So, I mean, the impact of bullying is very, very serious, and how it can impact us cognitively, psychologically, and emotionally. What I want you all to realize is that there is covert and overt forms of bullying behavior. Overt is more the obvious, and the covert is subtle, where you're thinking, was I bullied? Like, what is going on? And then you start self-doubting. So what I'm going to do is just to share some of those overt and covert behaviors. So overt would be verbal abuse, such as shouting or swearing at crew members in public or private, personal insults, constantly humiliating or ridiculing others, belittling them in front of others. So one I want to remind you of is the radio. If you're on a channel, whether it's your department's channel or the overall vessel's channel, do not criticize people's work on that channel. Have a conversation privately with them. Okay, so then we've also got open aggression, threats, abuse, shouting, uncontrolled anger. So another person shared with me that she was molested by a guest in the cabin when she was doing turndowns. She told the captain. The captain said that he won't tip any of the crew if she discloses. And in fact, she said what ended up happening was the captain was stealing the crew's tips. Persecution through threats and fear, physical attacks, making threats or inappropriate comments about career prospects, job security, this is a common one, or performance appraisal reports. Covert, subjecting targets to excessive supervision, so micromanaging, monitoring everything they do and being excessively critical about minor things with malicious intent. Taking the credit for the other person's work, but never the blame when things go wrong. Poor leadership. Personal insults and name calling. Spreading rumors, another big one that I hear often. Ignoring. So when someone greets you, or if you greet another person and that perpetrator, let's say the bully, completely ignores you when you say good morning, it's a form of bullying. So you might misinterpret that as maybe they got up on the wrong side of the bed, but if it's ongoing, then it's bullying. Okay, never listening to other people's points of view, always cutting across people in conversation. Now, I really like this one because it's very clear, removing whole areas of work responsibility from a person. So an example, because we work in a hierarchical structure, if it's a chief stew bullying a second stew and then giving the third more responsibility, a form of bullying. What else? Deliberately withholding information. Okay, another one, makes their life a nightmare, impossible to do your job when you don't have the right information, so they're setting them up for failure. Before I end this part, I want you to think about how often do you excuse the bully. So you might think, as I mentioned before, oh, maybe they just got up on the wrong side of the bed, but you could dismiss it as an attitude problem, a personality clash, or that micromanagement style of leading, or poor interpersonal skills. So really think about the definition and the behaviors, refer to the sheet that I'll give you, and then you'll have the evidence to perhaps dismiss or support your thoughts and feelings around, am I being bullied? And it doesn't only happen on board, it happens, I hear from captains, from yacht management companies. So it literally happens everywhere. It can happen from the owner or the guests. So we can't just isolate it to the crew on board. Right, Ange, have I covered that, or do you want me to go into what it feels like?
I think that is amazing, and I think that we can all agree that I think at some point in our lives we've all been bullied, but we've perhaps not realized we actually have been bullied, because if breaking it down into that is incredibly interesting and I think that yeah, across the board, even not even in yachting. There definitely have been times that I can say that I have been bullied, and I know that how I felt. But Corinne, could you actually explain a little bit further about actually how does that feel?
Absolutely. And before I mention that, one other thing of a example of covert is, I was thinking this yesterday on Instagram. If you are posting a team photo and then you purposely don't tag one of your team members, that's a covert form of bullying. You're purposely isolating them and excluding them. So what would it feel like? It would feel lonely. You would obviously feel sad. You will experience a sense of hopelessness. Perhaps you feel trapped. You may feel not good enough. And I will break it down into 3 different categories. But what happens when you experience ongoing stress and when you are working in a psychologically unsafe environment, or if you feel like you are walking on eggshells, volatile environments, that will create a lot of stress for you. And stress can lead to the onset of anxiety and depression. And that comes with a whole host of different feelings and behaviors. So ongoing stress engages the sympathetic nervous system, which means that we can respond in 3 main ways. There's other ways that there's new research of how we can also, but I'll just focus on the 3 that we may respond to the stress. But the common ones are flight, fight, and freeze. So it's how you perceive that threat. So you might respond with aggression, and that's the fight response. In my 20s, I definitely utilized the freeze response, where you feel like you can't run. Your feet are firmly fixed to the earth and you feel stuck. Then you have the flight response, where your mind and your body is saying, run, get out of here. And that might be quite difficult to do on board as well. And especially if you're working under a narcissist or you're being intimidated, I would imagine that most people will end up in the freeze response. So in terms of how it impacts you psychologically, behaviorally, and emotionally, so I covered the emotions, and everyone's different. We've got to remember that we're not we're not going to respond as per what the textbook describes how you should be experiencing these feelings and thoughts. We're all different. Some of the thoughts, so the mental cognitive, may be, I'm a failure, I'm not good enough, I'm worthless, no one likes me. So you might be having those thoughts. Then in terms of behavioral, you may isolate, you may lose your appetite, or you may emotionally eat and binge eat. You may suffer from insomnia. You may have heart palpitations, so that might be related to anxiety or leading on to panic attacks, sweaty palms. There's such a range out there that you could experience, but I would recommend doing your research on this. And this is why it's so important for us to have this conversation, because we're here to educate. If we can educate you, we can empower you. So I'm going to leave it there, Ange.
But it is. I mean, it's very scary as well. And I think that, because you can have that feeling of loneliness, because, you feel that you're the only one that's being targeted. So what is wrong with me? It has that sort of scariness to it. And at the end of the day, bullying and harassment takes many forms. And what we're seeing nowadays is cyber and social media bullying. So Sandra, can you inform us about that, please?
Yes, Angie, thanks so much. So for cyber and social media bullying and harassment, it's just important to take note that in some jurisdictions and countries, there are actually laws there to protect us against this type of bullying and harassment. It's aimed at scaring us, angering us, shaming us. It's targeting a person by spreading lies, posting embarrassing photos or videos. You could be sending somebody hurtful, abusive, or threatening messages, images, or videos. It could even be somebody impersonating somebody else online and sending mean messages to others on their behalf through fake accounts. And the important thing to note with any of this is that especially with cyber and social media bullying, it can also be done through WhatsApp groups. And that's what we see a lot of on board. I know Corinne's already mentioned that leaving some, not tagging somebody in an Instagram post or anything like that. It could also take the form of not adding people to a WhatsApp group or having a WhatsApp group just for a certain group of people on board, like a clique, and excluding people based on certain things. Obviously if you have an interior WhatsApp group, it's just for the interior, there's the criteria, but and that's something that I experienced on board one of the yachts that I was on that made me feel really left out and like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not being included in this WhatsApp group? So I've experienced that. And I know that we've also had there's a big, on one of the groups, a case where a crew member has been convicted of sharing nude photos of his girlfriend online, and that's we need to be very, very, very careful about, first of all, the things that we put out into the internet. I know there's a very good book in South Africa written by a lawyer about how to protect yourself against these things. And the first rule of thumb is just don't send nude photos of yourself anywhere. But it doesn't even have to be that. It could also just be, it's usually an ongoing thing. So receiving one message might not constitute harassment and bullying. It's usually over a prolonged period of time, and it's aimed to hurt that person and to make them feel shame, anger, or to scare or threaten them. All right. So I think the big thing with this is that it leaves a digital footprint. And that's important because it's easier to combine the evidence and to show evidence. Right, this person sent me a message at this date and this time. Here's a screenshot of it. All right, so it doesn't necessarily have to be violent in nature. Online, it is causing more psychological stress and anxiety rather than physical, although the threat of physical abuse would be there. So I just like to invite you to please take cognizance of the ways in which you might be contributing to this, and really, try and be inclusive on board, especially with new crew members who might, not really know that they're being excluded. All right, thanks so much.
And I think it's also a good point to bring up that with social media, we're all a little bit, guilty of it, aren't we? And we'll research and we'll look at things and we'll like things and we'll tag things and this, that, and the other. And inadvertently, the whole way that the meta thing works and algorithms and so forth, it then starts feeding you certain news topics and certain things, and I know definitely in the UK they've actually just had to bring in a law to stop companies from actually promoting these because of suicides, for especially young children that are committing suicide for that. Or so it has such a powerful impact, and the effects of that is just absolutely devastating. So Corinne, have you got anything more to add into those effects that though everything can subliminally have on you and your body and how you might react to that?
Yeah, Ange, I think I actually covered that in my spiel earlier. I thought I'd just flow on, but that's where you can break it down into the psychological, the behavioral, and then also the feelings. So again, I think just referring to a checklist helps you get out of that self-doubt and have more confidence in, hold on a minute, I am experiencing these things, I am thinking these things, there's nothing wrong with me, I need to reach out for help.
Which is perfect, because Dominic, over to you now. So what is actually, if we're bringing it back to yachting, what are the seafarers' rights?
Yeah, so it's really important when you join the yachting industry to know your rights, and if you have joined and you don't know them, to brush up on them. When you get given documents on board to review and to sign, make sure you actually do read them, not just say you've read them and sign them away. It's really important to understand what you're reading and what you've been given, because it's there for a reason. So very, very important. It's going to sound a little bit jargony now, but I just want to go through the authorities and the policies that are here that relate to this webinar. And then we'll just go through the most relevant ones. So basically you'll have the most relevant authorities in this instance are the flag states, the International Labour Organization, and the International Maritime Organization. And then under these authorities, they have their own policies, okay? And Bullying and Harassment is mentioned in a few of them, but the ones you need to know about are the MLC, the Maritime Labour Convention, the DMLC, which is the Declaration of Maritime Labour Convention, and the ISM, which is the International Safety Management Code. So I just want to quickly, I know that sounds like a lot, especially for new crew or people that have just joined the industry. But we're just going to break it down a little bit. So I'm going to start with the MLC. So this convention outlines a broad perspective of seafarers' rights. So that includes things like your employment terms, your health and safety, etc. Now, commercial vessels need to be MLC compliant, but pleasure vessels, it's optional for them. So not all yachts are going to be MLC compliant. So that's one of the first things that you should find out about a vessel that you're joining. If your vessel is not MLC compliant, then the flag state is going to be the ultimate authority that you're going to go to, right? And the laws under which the vessel is governed. So that's for new crew is where your vessel is registered. So the Cayman Islands, Isle of Man, those are going to be your flag states. But specifically in the MLC, it states that ship owners and governments need to take measures to protect seafarers. And this is outlined in a particular document called Guidance on Eliminating Shipboard Harassment and Bullying. So this document actually exists and it's available online, but I'm sure we'll make it available to the audience too. It also states that the competent authority should ensure that implications for health and safety are taken into account, particularly, and it lists harassment and bullying. It also states that investigations need to be held for problems arising from harassment and bullying. So this is like formal documentation. I know we're always, back in the day was harassment and bullying is wishy-washy subject, but it's actually like formal and it's there and it's stated in these policies. So if your vessel's not MLC compliant and you're just run under the flag state and the company, which is the owning company of the vessel, must have a policy and procedure on board and available to seafarers to investigate complaints. It's called the complaints procedure, and it actually needs to be given to each seafarer. So if you haven't received it, or when you get on board, please ask them if they have this procedure. Again, it's not mandatory if you're not MLC, but ask them for this policy or procedure so you know what to do when a complaint arises. And then just also under the flag states, they have the documentation called the DMLC, which I mentioned earlier, which is the Declaration of Maritime and Labour Convention. So this outlines each element of the flag state laws that give effect to the MLC. Okay, so this is also really important if they're not run under, if your flag state or your vessel, is not MLC compliant. So it's also a very good document to have a look at. And then part of the IMO, this is a lot of acronyms in yachting. We always make such a joke about it because there's just about a billion. So the International Maritime Organization, okay, has a code called the ISM, so the International Safety Management Code. And part of this is a safety management system. Okay, what the system does on board is identify all risks and safeguards, and this includes bullying and harassment, because bullying and harassment is essentially a risk on board. So this applies to all ships of 500 gross tons upwards. So in one capacity or another, you should have some sort of policy or code that identifies bullying harassment on board and that there is a pathway to deal with that. Okay. Also, just a little fun fact is that's actually also in the Code of Conduct for the Merchant Navy. And it literally says a person's antisocial behavior can be a nuisance to others on board. So in extreme circumstances, it can place the ship and crew at risk of danger, and it can be excessive noise, abusive language, harassment, bullying, aggressive attitudes, offensive personal habits. So they also have it in their code of conduct that you need to be considerate to other crew members, you know. So I just want to leave you with quickly questions to ask when you are on board. If you're a new crew member or you're joining a new vessel, make sure you know where the vessel is registered, so what the flag state is, and then ask them if the vessel is MLC compliant, and then if they have an onboard complaint procedure, and if you can have a look at it, if they've not given it to you already. And then also please read your contract so that you know what you're signing to, because you can be held to what's in your contract. So make sure you at least read through it, and if you're an overachiever, you can you know it backwards. I had one crew member ask a very random question, but she basically asked what would happen to her body if she was to die at sea. And I think it was actually written in her contract. So yeah, I mean, there's things in there that would be hopefully you'll never have to deal with, but it's best to know what's in your contract. So yeah, just make sure you do research on these. We'll provide resources for you, but it's also all on the internet, so do your research and make sure you know what you're getting yourself into.
For sure. Thank you, Dominic. Just as a quick question, being a lay person, obviously I do personally know this, but I want to push it over to you. How would especially a new crew member know if their vessel is MLC compliant or not?
Yeah, I mean, you can always ask the master. He should be able to tell you. Otherwise, that would be my first go-to. Yeah, that's what I would do. Or the recruitment company should be able to find out for you if you're not in contact with the master. And Sandra, I think you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, the rule of thumb is that the vessel's over 500 gross tons and commercially registered. So, yeah.
Yeah, so if your vessel's commercial, then you will, but if it's private, then you will have to ask, because they're not held.
Well, I know that a lot of crew, especially on their CVs, that they say that they're working on a commercial private vessel. So sometimes they don't even know what they're working on. And as we know that Marshall Island and Cayman Island vessels can flip-flop between private and commercial under the YET scheme, and being under that yacht engaged in trade scheme, they should be commercially active all the time. But at the end of the day, if you are working on a private vessel, what can you do? Where can you go? That's definitely, I know, a big thing and a big question that a lot of people do actually ask as well. So, there, over to you now, Sandra, because what can a crew member do? Where can they go?
Thanks, Angie. All right, so yeah, the first thing that when it comes down to bullying and harassment is that you need to start keeping a diary. You need to have a diary with dates, times, description of the situation, the event, how you felt, any witnesses. And really, this is going to be useful as providing evidence. And if something is so serious as that it needs to be, you can request for it to be recorded in the logbook. And obviously, if it's something of a criminal nature, you're going to need to report it to the authorities ashore. One of the big things in proving these cases or proving harassment or proving bullying, especially where there's no physical, somebody hasn't hit you physically, it's more an emotional thing, is that you need to get help from a professional like a counselor or psychologist. And the reason for this report is that it's to show that you are experiencing harm. It's to show that the harm that you have suffered as a result of this behavior. And this report can be used as evidence in whatever hearing that you're going to be having or investigation. And then depending on the severity, so obviously the onboard complaints procedure, you always want to try and resolve things at the lowest possible level that you can. Now, if you're bullying, if you feel comfortable, just setting a boundary and really just saying, right, are you aware that when you do this, this is how it makes me feel. Sometimes people are unaware, all right? And we don't need to escalate something to the highest possible level, you know, in the very, very first thing. So it does start with setting a boundary and explaining that, you know, when you do this, it makes me feel like this. If you don't feel like you can talk to the person alone, you can also ask for an independent crew member to come along with you to witness something, and also to be part of the informal investigation that can start taking place on board. And sometimes bullies can retreat from, you know, when people stand up to them or push back a little bit, they'll sometimes then go and look for a softer target. But sometimes it might not feel safe. I know Corinne's mentioned all the psychological effects of bullying and harassment, and placing yourself in a situation where you have to face the abuser or the perpetrator can also cause a physical response to your body as well. And I know certainly in South Africa, the courts in domestic violence and harassment cases have now started to appoint an independent party to be in the room and not put the two people together, because it does re-traumatize you. All right, so the biggest thing is just you need to remain objective. I think a lot of crew members, because they don't know what to do, and because of the stress response, you know, we forget that we are sometimes acting from a stress response, and we ourselves might not act correctly. So I'd like to also invite you, if you are a victim of this, just to remember that your reactions might have an impact down the line on your case. So just try and stay calm, just remain objective, try and take your diary, just write down everything. The best thing to do is to have a notebook where you can't like add pages or pull them out. It's very clear that there's nothing added and it's in a chronological order. And, you know, yeah, so we're talking about lines of communication. So if you don't feel comfortable saying to somebody, please, can you stop? Then to go to your head of department and just discuss this with them. You should have an independent person on board. Usually it's someone like the purser. I know a lot of yachts also appoint their nurse as this person that you can go and get independent advice from. And this is just really around the harm that you're suffering and the next steps to take legally. I know a lot of crew members, because they feel that they're going to be further victimized on board, that the choice sometimes is, well, either I'm just going to leave, it's not worth the effort to me mentally, I'm just going to leave, I'm not going to report it. The best course of action is just to go. And that's also okay if that's what you feel you need to move on and to be safe. Yeah, I also, you know, the issue that we have often is that because these aren't being reported and nothing is being done, we allow this behavior to continue on board. And the reporting to flag states is actually very, 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 very low. And so when they the flag states put out their annual surveys and reports on, you know, the welfare issues that have been escalated to them, bullying and harassment often is very, very low. So obviously your head of department, and then you can go to your captain. All right, so the master is the next person to go to on board. And again, if it's the captain who is the one who is harassing or bullying, you can go to your DPA or the person at the your MLC employer. So whether that is, so that would be the person that you've signed your SCA with. Right, so usually it's a cell division of the management company somewhere in Guernsey. So if it is that they have their certain timeframes within which these people need to respond. So, you know, you have 7 days from reporting it to your captain for there to be a resolution. There can be an informal or a formal inquiry done. And again, you know, you can request that it be noted in the logbook. So after that, again, going up the chain of command, they have a certain amount of days to just provide a solution or a resolution. All right. So the final person that you can go to is your shipping master. All right. So please, 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 a lot of times I get, how do we report something, or how do we go to the flag state to report this? Every single flag state will have a shipping master. And I know that, so as the PYA welfare group, we are communicating with the shipping masters, we are communicating with management companies to try and help resolve things like this on board, and to provide better information to crew members when this is happening, right? So your diary is going to be the first port of call for any investigation. And if you can, if it's been any message that you have. So if you have an email, if you have a WhatsApp, if you have an iMessage, just you can take screenshots of that. In South Africa, when you're reporting these issues, you have to write an affidavit. So reporting it, first of all, the facts, like who are you? How are you employed on board? Like, who is this person in your life? And then just listing in a chronological order the dates and times that these things have affected you. And what I found is really helpful is to understand, especially if there's legislation in your country, all the types of abuse that can happen, right? And harassment and bullying. So specifically address each of those issues in an affidavit or in just a statement, writing down what happened. Okay. So please do understand when you come on board, please know who your flag state is. Often I know crew, they're like, who is the flag state? Okay, in my contract, or I see the certificate of registry, it's a company in BVIs, is that the flag state? Okay, well, no, the flag, if you look at the stern of the vessel, you'll see very clearly what the flag state is. Okay, so yeah, I think that's the best thing to do. The best line of form of defense is just to be very, very organized and keep a very, very, very detailed record of everything that is happening on board. Okay, and get the witnesses to write statements too.
Sandra, is it paramount to have witness statements as well? Because I know that potentially some crew might be afraid of bringing other people in, because at the end of the day, we do hear quite a lot that one of the reasons why people don't report is the fact that they're afraid of losing their job, getting into trouble, getting somebody else into trouble. So if they're bringing other people in as witness statements, they might feel uncomfortable with that, and the witnesses themselves may feel uncomfortable doing that.
Angie, this is a huge issue. Exactly why a lot of cases just don't, there's no solution, or there's not enough evidence. It's very difficult to prove something, a conversation that has happened. Again, there's certain laws against recording conversations here in South Africa. You are able to record a conversation that you are party to, without having to tell the other person that you're recording. So again, if you are going into a difficult situation or a conversation, just to perhaps, even if it is just a voice recording, so that you can record what happened down the line, not necessarily for presenting as evidence, but just so that you can at least go back and say, right, well, this is exactly what was said. I've noticed when people are in a stress response, right, your blood goes from your brain into your body, and how people recall events can differ depending on who it is that's telling it. And I know one of the things that the shipping masters have said, right, we get these complaints from crew, and then we get the other side of the story, and sometimes those two pictures can be very, very, very different. And that's why, it would be helpful to have those witness statements, but that's why you do an inquiry on board. That's why there should be either a formal or an informal inquiry done, where you go, the captain or the DPA or, the shipping master goes and actually asks people questions, right? Did you witness this? What did you see? Instead of somebody just writing a statement, there should be some kind of inquiry done.
Which then leads on to the actual steps in reporting. So what is the actual, timeline and the sequence of events to actually report, Dominique?
So obviously the sooner the better, and then who you're going to report to obviously depends who is committing the offence against you. Because say it is your HOD, you're not going to go speak to them about it. Well, you can if you want to, 100%. It's good to have a conversation with somebody who is offending you and just letting them know, that it's not what you're comfortable with, what's making you uncomfortable, or it's affecting you in a certain way. If you don't want to do that, that's also okay. But definitely your HOD would be the first person that you go and speak to. Otherwise, your chief officer, like Sandra said, I think she mentioned quite a couple of people that you can go to. somebody impartial, chief officer, your purser, the nurse, and then obviously your captain as well. And those are the people you can kind of address on board, go to on board. If you feel like you cannot go to any of these people and you need a shoreside party, then you would go to your DPA, and this information is always in the crew mess with their contact details, and you can go and find that there. If it's not there, it should be. And then need to am I here?
Yeah, sorry, you just froze for a second there.
Yeah, and part of the reason we started this welfare group was so that people can come speak to us if they don't feel comfortable with any of these other avenues, like I said beforehand, the flag state and the shipping master is the ultimate authority on the vessel, especially if something's happened at sea. Then that's who you're going to kind of go to, because you're in international waters. If you're then if a criminal act is committed against you, you can go to and report it directly to the authorities, the police as your closest port, and report it to the flag state. But again, that needs to be a criminal offense. So there's so many avenues you can take, so many support groups available. Like we said, Nautilus is great for any legal issues. And yeah, we're here as well if you're not sure, if your situation is a little bit different and you're not sure what avenue to take, please always come contact us. We're very happy to assist and point you in the right direction.
Absolutely, thank you. I think it is very important to realise, what your rights are, and how you can stand up for yourself, to be your own voice, and perhaps even to be a voice for others. And definitely for us, this welfare group is about helping you understand your rights, empowering you to act accordingly. But we can't do it unless you tell us, share your story with us. Karine actually has a whole survey question that I'm sure that she would be happy to share out onto the chat with you guys. Karine, do you want to just mention and say something a little bit about that?
And you know what? I don't think so. I've shared it in the chat, but it's only saying hosts and panelists. So I don't know if those are tuning into the webinar can access the chat, and it's been awfully quiet from what I can see in the chat. So maybe if one of you out there who's listening, if you can use the chat bar just to see if it is actually functioning at the moment, that would be quite helpful, because I'm not too sure. I can't see any. Oh, there we go. I can see.
Should we go to everybody? So if you go to everybody, you can share that survey.
If you go to if you click on the Q&A, there we go.
There is the chat that you can do for everybody. So actually what I can do is copy and
then Lawrence has said, thank you, Sandra, for mentioning the need to resolve matters at the lowest level possible. Preempting problems should be the first line of defense, and implementing and coaching the 4 steps of nonviolent communication on board could be a great initiative. So Sandra's responding to Lawrence. And then we also had, what can a crew do on board to manage their mental health? How can they equip themselves with resources and tools? And I can see that Sandra is responding. If we've got, please use the chat. So if you want to ask any further questions, because we have about 12 minutes left. But Ange, if you don't mind, there's something else I'd like to share in terms of, I think, generally what the crew are looking for based on this particular survey. So a crew member said, I feel there needs to be a better support and understanding within the yachting industry and within the management companies on how to handle and deal with mental health, how to help people that are suffering, make it a comfortable situation that people do feel safe to speak up if they're struggling and don't suffer alone. I think there also needs to be better leadership courses that need to do out there for captains. I'm reading this directly. I haven't changed the copy whatsoever. for captains and heads of departments so that they can lead by example and have the right skills and tool sets. Yacht management companies need to someone now make crew feel more comfortable with calling them or getting them involved. I know people always worry if it's going to cause a big problem, make it worse, or even if it's going to fix anything. Will you just get fired and be unemployable because you were the one that called the DPA? I feel there needs to be a better support and understanding within the yachting industry and within management companies on how to handle and deal with mental health, how to help people that are suffering, make it so she's, yeah, okay, so we've covered that. So basically she's looking to achieve what we're trying to achieve, which is to close the gaps. So through education, I think, so providing more support to crew so this doesn't happen.
We have Boris Sablik, who's raised his hand. I'm just going to allow you to talk, Boris. So would you like to ask your question? Boris, you need to unmute yourself.
Hi, okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm sorry that I'm on the road. I couldn't be on board right now. It's very quiet. But I just wanted to say something about vessels, commercials, 500 GT, under, above, and so on. So when you have the vessel above 500 GT, which is commercial, then you have all of these procedures, and it's quite easy to raise any how to say protest or concerns about the behavior of some crew. But when you have a private vessel under 500 GT, then excuse my language, but you are basically F, you know what I mean? Because, for example, I've been chief and a captain for like more than 20 years now. And what I can say from my experience is that, for example, this summer we had, right now I'm a chief officer on 40 meters. We are just under 500 GT. We had a situation where the chef, chief stew, and second stew were contacted the DPA, raising some concerns about the captain and the engineer. What happened is that the manager or the designated person ashore called the captain immediately and actually told him who said what and who sent what and so on and so on. So basically, all of them were fired except the chef, because the chef was owner's how do you say best guy, so he wasn't fired, but everybody else were fired. And actually the problem wasn't the captain. So all of this that you talk about is very nice in theory, but in practice, when you go to the DPA, you're gonna get fired. So my advice to all the newbies, yachties who are into the industry, I agree, take notes, take a diary, record. It doesn't matter if it's illegal or not, but it's gonna help you to remember later on, and it's gonna, if you show it to the policeman, he's gonna, you know, even if it's illegal, he's gonna do some action, and leave the vessel, because if you have a issue with a chief or with a captain who's on board, let's say 2, 4, 5, 7 years, it doesn't matter. Maybe he had some issues before, maybe somebody raised some issues before, but rarely management and the owners are going to get rid of the senior crew. They're going to go against the junior crew. So when you have this kind of situation, of course, make everything official, make a claim, report that to anybody who needs to know, and leave the vessel. There's thousands of boats around, and it doesn't worth of your time or your effort and your physical and mental health to fight with these Goliaths, so to say. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Boris. Thanks for your input there. And yes, it is. I have to say, it's difficult if you're on a private vessel, but you still have your contract. Your contract is still viable, it is still enforceable, and you need to remember that. Just because you might not be on an MLC compliant vessel, that doesn't mean that you have lost your rights. You still do, and it is still legally enforceable in the jurisdiction that you will find that is listed in your contract. So be aware of that.
Sorry, just quickly, Kate Small also pointed out that yachts under 500 tons can also do voluntary compliance. So it doesn't mean just because they're under 500 tons that they're not compliant. They can, yeah.
Well, actually, any vessel that's over 150 gross tons do need to be compliant with MLC, that they are commercially registered. So as we can see, it is a hot topic, and there is going to be loads and loads to discuss. Just to come back to mental health, how can you manage your mental health on board? I know, Sandra, you probably typed a little answer there, but maybe Samantha, can you impart a little bit of information about how to manage your mental health on board?
You can make sure that you're getting proper rest on board, proper nutrition, reduce your alcohol intake, and also can bring essential oils that can help you calm and relieve stress.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Well, where is the hour gone? That just happened so quickly, and it just it's been amazing. And as I said, it's a hot topic. I hope that we've answered some unasked questions, and naturally, if you do have any further questions, please do email us on welfare@pya.org. And it doesn't necessarily need to be about bullying and harassment. We are here for your safeguarding and your mental well-being, your interests, your safety. As I said before, we are working in the background. We're trying to make a difference to flag states. We want to be your voice, but we can't be your voice without you telling us. And obviously as well, you need to know that if you don't report anything, you can't help yourself, and nobody else can help you either. So did any of the panelists want to say anything further? Sandra?
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Angie, and thanks for all the panelists and all the attendees for being here. We just have one more question. Just how do we get more people to take the mental health awareness first aid training and heads of department to be better trained? And Angie, I don't know if you can share something that is going to be included in the STCW.
Yes, go ahead. You
go. I know it's been a very big topic of conversation and the mental health first aid training, and I know that they have been looking to implement this into the mandatory basic safety training that crew need to do before they start in yachting. However, as we know, with any convention and any change in convention, it takes a very long time to implement and to actually. I think we did have a joke that we'll be retired.
Yes, I know.
But, yes, there are plans. I mean, this is a very, very hot topic, and it has been discussed at the IMO level. So there are plans to.
Absolutely, yeah. The STCW is under review right now. So there will be implementation of different amendments coming through, with the last big load of amendments that happened in 2010. So we really are overdue for a big shake-up, and I am very excited to hear that the mental health awareness and training will be included as a mandatory STCW course. So yes, fantastic. So just to wrap up, back to the PYA, just to let you know that the PYA has also been appointed by the UK MCA to verify sea service and relevant professional crew. And the PYA does cultivate working relationships with maritime organisations at regional, national and international levels. So, and we are working in that cog as well for you in that respect as well. Also, fab news, fab. New basic membership for crew, €35 per year for the PYA. Amazing, what a steal. For that, you get advice on joining your career path, one-to-one assistance with your contracts, work, legal and welfare issues, information on latest yacht crew news, trainings and regulations, and an invitation to join all networking events, skills, workshops, etc. and forums. So fantastic deal. Please join, sign up right now. So without any further ado, thank you so much to all of my fantastic welfare panelists. Thank you so much for your time. Remember, we are volunteers and we are just happy to be here and so proud to finally be a voice in front of you. Thank you so much to all the participants, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.